Hi folks, in this video I'm going to talk about some of the main points by Kendall Walton in his article Categories of Art. I'll share the screen. Let's go here. There we go. That's Kendall Walton there. Hope you can see it. Born in 1939. He's a professor of philosophy at the University of Michigan. His work mainly deals with theoretical questions about the arts. So Walton begins by saying circumstances surrounding a work's origin are frequently held to have no important bearing on its aesthetic assessment. Now, this is true of formalism, for instance. Formalism is the aesthetic theory that says that the way to appreciate art, or if it's used as a theory of what art is, that art just is the appreciation, the perception of forms and colors in relation to each other. This is formalism. So he's arguing against formalism. Walton is against formalism because formalism holds that the origin of the work, that is who painted a painting, who sculpted a sculpture, who created a building, whatever it is in art, that the origin of the piece has nothing to do with how it should be appropriately appreciated or understood. Critics are advised to ignore how and when a work was created, the artist's intentions, his philosophical views, his personal life, the artistic traditions of his society, etc. Once produced, a work of art must stand or fall on its own in this formalist view, right? The view that is counter to what Kendall Walton is going to be arguing. And in fact, he says he will argue that certain facts about the origins of works of art have an essential role in criticism. Simple perception is not enough, according to Walton. Okay. So now he gives some definitions about different kinds of features. So a feature of a work of art is standard for that category with respect to the category if the absence of that feature would disqualify it from that category. So a feature of a work is standard if the absence of the feature would disqualify it from that category. Okay, so you'll get the sense of this as we go along. A feature is variable if it has nothing to do with works in that category. A feature is ContraStandard if its presence disqualifies it from that category. So you think, for instance, in terms of standard. So for a painting, a flat surface is standard. Having different colors on a canvas, that's standard. What's variable is what colors are used in a painting, which particular colors are used. And in painting, if it has nothing to do, if there's some like bulging out of the canvas, in other words, the painting is not just flat on the surface, but it really kind of bulges out. That's something that's variable. Some paintings have it, some paintings don't. But the variable standards, the variable features have are important in being able to delineate the uniqueness of each one, because each work of art has variable standards as well as, variable features as well as standard features. Now, a feature is ContraStandard if its presence disqualifies it from that category. So, for instance, if a painting is part of a, let's see, if painting is makes sound, for instance, if there's sound coming from the painting, in virtue of making sound, that would be ContraStandard to that category. So it would not be a painting at that point. It might be something, a painting plus something else. It may be a different category entirely that's made up. For instance, Robert Rauschenberg used to make these huge paintings, but with things put on them, sort of collages as well as paintings. And he called them combines. So he was attempting to start a new category of work of art based on a combination of a couple of other things. Okay. So he's making a psychological thesis. The psychological thesis is that what aesthetic properties a work has depends on which features are standard, variable, and contra-standard. I guess this is a psychological thesis because this is what goes on in our mind when we're trying to figure out how to understand a work of art, a particular work of art. So there's a paradox here. On the one hand, a significant degree of resemblance is a necessary condition for representation. So representational works, what's necessary in those is that there be some kind of resemblance between the painting and something else. On the other hand, paintings and people are very different sorts of things. Paintings are pieces of canvas with splotches of paint. That's paintings. People are alive, three-dimensional flesh and blood animals. How then can anyone seriously hold that a portrait resembles a person? To resolve this paradox, we have to realize that these resemblances are of a special sort, tied up with categories. Flatness and its painted look are standard properties for portraits. Colors and shapes are variable properties. These are relevant to representation. Okay. So, 2. This distinction isn't only relevant to resemblance or representation. Imagine a society with Guernicas, not paintings. All are surfaces in various bas-relief dimensions with the colors and shapes of Picasso's Guernica. Okay, that's bas-relief. This last little red thing, reddish, yellowish thing there. Bas-relief is when it stands out from the, when something is actually made to sort of be a sort of a raised sculpture on the flat surface. Okay, some are sharp and jagged. Some have rolling surfaces, others relatively flat planes. If members of this society came across Picasso's Guernica, they would count it as a Guernica, a perfectly flat one, rather than a painting. Flatness would be variable, standard for us. Remember, paintings, the flatness in a painting is a standard feature of paintings. But in this society of Guernicas, they would have different standard features, so and different variable features. Okay. Okay. So flatness would be variable, standard for us. The figures would be standard for us, because that's what made it a Guernica, standard feature for them. This would make for a profound difference between our aesthetic reaction and theirs. To us, the Guernica is, to us, it's violent, dynamic, vital, and disturbing. To them, it's cold, stark, lifeless, dull, and boring, because it's just a flat surface, right? For them, flatness is not standard, where it is for us. For them, that's variable, but it's kind of boring. So we take its flatness for granted, but this is its most characteristic feature for them. Alternatively, its color patches are noteworthy for us, insignificant for them. And 3, we find ContraStandard features shocking, disconcerting, and upsetting because they disqualify the work from the category we are trying to perceive it in. Three-dimensional objects protruding from the canvas and movement in a sculpture, monochromatic paintings. These are examples of ContraStandard. We either create a new category or expand an old one. So how do we determine which category a work should be placed in? So here are some ways to determine which category a work should be placed in. So say we're looking at a work of art and we're trying to figure out what category it should go in, because in Walton's view, we can't even appreciate a work of art until we figure out what category it goes into. We don't know how to understand a work except through the category that it's in. So how do we determine which category a work should be placed in? The presence in W just means the work of art, so it's just a variable there. It's a constant. The presence in W of a large number of ContraStandard works. 2, the fact that the work is more interesting or pleasing aesthetically when perceived in C, a category. So W is a work and C is a category. So this is how we determine whether which category a work should be placed in. The fact that the work is more interesting or pleasing aesthetically when perceived in a particular category. 3, the artist of the work intended it to be perceived in a particular category. Number 4, the category is well established in and recognized by the society in which the work was produced. And then in conclusion, Walton says that if a work's properties are those to be found in it when it is perceived correctly, and the correct way involves historical facts about intention and society, no examination of the work alone will reveal these properties. If we come across a work about whose origins we know nothing, we would not be in a position to judge it aesthetically. Thank you very much for taking your time and giving your attention to this video about this very interesting article. Thank you very much, and see you next time.